The Square Ball Podcast.
Hello there, welcome to the show. The West Stand is our new show. It's out on a Monday and a Friday, available on YouTube and in your podcast app, where we welcome guests from across the world of Leeds United. My name's Dan Moylan. Hello, with me is Michael Normanton. Michael?
All right.
Have you got your eye on a Black Friday deal?
Do you know what? I have got a sense of one.
That was the cheesiest sell I could possibly imagine doing.
Like a VPN one, something like that is what I'm after.
Good, you should mention that. Thank you. Yeah, we've got an exclusive Black Friday deal from our new show sponsor, NordVPN. What would you use NordVPN for, Michael?
Well, we've been nominated for the FSA Awards. Not a public vote. Otherwise, I'd be encouraging you to use it for that, to go on and rinse as many votes for us as possible. Unfortunately, it's been decided by a panel, is the fanzine category. So not that, but you could use it to have a little trip around the world for LUTV or something. Yeah. Just as an example, something you could have. Sporting
events, TV shows, movies that are not available in your region. For example, you can protect your private data as well. Loads of great use cases for it, and there's the NordVPN threat protection feature now as well, which protects you from viruses, malware and phishing. The fastest VPN in the world. Make a fast noise for me.
Meow.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Got a fast man on the show.
Yeah, we have. Yeah. Well, I was going to say I'm a customer of NordVPN. I was already paying for it, which means that they've actually offered us a bit of a freebie to test it out. Don't need it. I was already giving them my money.
Ask for a voucher. That's what I'd do.
If you want to get the exclusive Black Friday discount off your NordVPN plan, go to nordvpn.com/TSB. That will give you an additional 4 months on top of your discounted 2-year plan. It's risk-free as well. 30-day money-back guarantee offered by Nord. That's nordvpn.com/TSB. You can find the link in the episode description box. Now, on to our guest, former Leeds United player, Aidan White. Welcome to the show, Aidan. Nice to have you along.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Another debut for you?
It is indeed. First podcast. And yeah, thanks for having me on TSB. Really looking forward to it.
So you retired, about 12 months ago now?
Yeah, about 18 maybe. So it was sort of the back end of not the season that's gone, the one before.
Yeah, so it was Rochdale you finished up at?
Yeah, Rochdale. It wasn't kind of by choice. It was almost a little bit forced upon me. Yeah, I kind of retired with multiple concussions and sort of bad illness after it. So yeah, it wasn't sort of ideal, but things happen. I was kind of coming towards the back end of my career as it was, and yeah, it felt probably like the right thing to do to call it at that time.
Yeah, with concussions, particularly with the attention around head injuries in football now, you don't want to be taking any risks, I suppose.
No, and I probably took one too many in my career. I kind of had multiple, and it was just maybe like I said, that last one might have just been too much. I kind of had 3 in about a month, and previous to that, I'd had plenty. So some that I'd hidden just to kind of get by in games, but that was probably a bit silly looking back, but that's part of nature of the game. I guess you just want to play.
Absolutely. And actually, it's probably worth talking about injuries as well, because it's something that's afflicted Leeds this season. There's a couple of medium to long-term injuries that we haven't really had in the last couple of years. There have been, 1 or 2 where players have missed out short-term, but particularly in the midfield area, Leeds have suffered this year. What's it like then as a pro when you get that diagnosis and you realise it's going to be months, and what goes through your head at that point?
Most of all, it's just the frustrating thing. You kind of work so hard and you prepare your body every day just to kind of maintain fitness, and it just stalls your progress, and you've got a massive uphill battle to kind of fight to get over that, and the day-to-day routine of being injured. You're away from the lads a little bit. You're on the bike. You're doing your rehab. It's dull. It's boring. But I guess you just kind of, the quicker you can change your mindset into turn it into a positive. Can I improve myself? Can I get stronger in this period? That's kind of the best thing to do in those situations. But for your likes of Ampadu, who's going to be out for a period of time now, it's frustrating, especially when he's such a leader and a character and the captain of the club. It's going to be difficult, but he will lead from a different way. I imagine that it'll be very much hands-on with the lads in the change rooms and things like that, getting behind them. But as an injured player, it's really difficult.
Yeah, I was going to ask how have different managers dealt with it, because from interviews you hear with ex-players, sometimes injured players are very much away from the squad, and other times they're still an integral part of it. Who handled it in the best way for you?
Do you know what? I was thinking the other day about this. So there was a period when I just kind of broken into the first team. Gary McAllister was the manager at the time, and I was starting to get the injuries then. and there was discussion that I was going to kind of have like 6 to 8 weeks of like no football. I wasn't injured, but just to kind of like build myself up, to prepare for, first team football. So it was just kind of a case I'd maybe train on my own in the gym and things like that a little bit more. And
was that physical work?
Yeah, kind of physical stuff. Not kind of like running wise, I was fit in terms of that, but just like the strength aspect of, I was still a young lad. And then unfortunately, he got the sack and Simon Grayson came in and that kind of changed the plans a little bit. So it was more, back in, I wasn't necessarily chucked into the first team as such, but it was more, I'd be training, didn't have that aspect of, trying to build myself up at that young age. But there'd been plenty of, not necessarily just managers as well that deal with it, different chairmen, Celino at the time, when I'd had a long-term injury where I had a broken metatarsal and it hadn't healed and it was all going a little bit messed up. So I wasn't allowed in like changing rooms and things like that before games, and that's quite frustrating because you want to say good luck to the lads, and I'm banned because I'm on crutches, bad luck charms and things like that. So
really?
yeah,
that was directly Chileno.
Yeah, so it came down from Chileno, and different managers have different ways of. Some are very much want to get you to the games and come on the bus this week, come see down and see the lads. But I've had multiple managers that have been very supportive and like take time, do what you need to do to get back, and we'll be here for you. And then there was a kind of just like, well, you're away from it for now and you're out of sight, out of mind. God,
I'm looking back at the era that you were at Leeds, which was it was 2008 to 2015, wasn't it? So you've seen a lot of change and a lot of churn and some, what I would describe as some characters.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's one way of putting it.
So who did you live through, if that's the right phrase? There was Bates would have been there at the start. You saw Chileno as well, GFH somewhere in the middle. Was it as chaotic behind the scenes as we got the impression it was from the terraces? Well,
I mean, we're kind of protected to somewhat degree. We don't see everything that went on. You kind of get the gist of certain periods of time where it's a little bit more sketchy than others. Is one way of putting it. There was that period where we had to bring our own lunches and various things like that, and just the turmoil around the club. And compared to what it is now, it feels like completely different. I know I'm not on the inside now as such, so I don't know what goes on in the change rooms and things like that. But for certain periods while I was at the club, it was very much difficult. Things were kind of taken away, whereas now we've got that platform where it feels like the club's on an upward trajectory, and where when I was there it was just kind of like up and down constantly and not really knowing where you stood. And I'd imagine that's probably a lot of fans' point of view as well.
Yeah, very much. I'd say so too. Yeah. I mean, so the edict comes down, the order comes down from the top. You've got to bring your own lunches. So how did you learn of that? Is there the players' WhatsApp group where you learn that? And what was the overall reaction to that? Is this guy for real?
I think my first sort of protocol, and a lot of lads' protocol, was, well, if we're bringing our own lunches, what's happening with the staff? The staff were getting laid off. The dinner staff, which were legends at the time, Izzy and his staff. I don't know if they're back at the club now. I'm not too sure, but and then periods of you washing your own kit and things like that, and you just think, well, what's quite going on here? It's a difficult period as a player. Not washing your own kit. That is what it is. Do you know what I mean? But the level of professionalism you're used to, it's kind of gone out of the window. And you try to do sort of rehab and things like that, and you're not allowed to use certain areas of the training ground anymore, and because I don't know, money saving and things like that. So it was a strange period while I was at the club, and I'd like to think if maybe I'd have been a few years down the line, I might have had a bit longer, but it is what it is. And I still really enjoyed playing for what was my team growing up. So
is there an awareness, I suppose, when you're a pro there, that like this isn't going on at other clubs at this level? There's a sort of a baseline professionalism within the game at other clubs. Well, you must speak to, it's a fairly small industry, isn't it? And you're going like, you're having to bring your own lunch. And you're like, yeah.
I think especially when you're at a club like Leeds, such a stature and a history, and everyone's like you say, you speak to other clubs, the people think you're winding them up, like no chance, you know what I mean? And then you tell them, no, really, like, and they're like, they just don't believe it. And like I say, it's difficult, but ultimately, when you're on the pitch, when you're on the training ground, that kind of goes out the window, but it just creates a little bit of uncertainty around everything. And like you say, that lack of a little bit of professionalism.
Sam Byram still at Leeds.
Good.
You played alongside him?
I did, yeah.
At the time, what memories do you have of playing alongside young Sam Byram?
Brilliant, yeah. As soon as I got sort of first training with Sam, he came in, I don't know, he must have been 17, 18, and people were asking me what he's like. I said, he's brilliant. He said he'll have a tremendous career. I think, unfortunately, he's although he's had a very good career, I think it'd have been even better if it wasn't kind of stalled and with all his injuries and stuff like that. But I think even at the minute, he can show when he's on the pitch, the last 2 games that he's played, last game against Plymouth, he was very good. And then I just think, he's, like I say, he's suffered from so many long-term injuries that it's just a case of, can he string, a full season together? Because if he could, I feel like he'd be, first choice right back. But unfortunately, he's struggled with that, and I can feel his pain because I was in very much the same boat.
When you watch Leeds now, are you able to watch it as a fan, or is it sometimes a bit of a busman's holiday? Because I know you do the radio with Johnny Buchan and the BBC Radio Leeds guy, and obviously you're brought in there to offer the professionals' point of view. Can you detach from that and ever just consume it as just a fan anymore?
More so as time goes on. I think you detach yourself a little bit more. Initially, that period when I left the club and I was still kind of playing football, that was quite hard, like to just watch Leeds. Like I say, it hurt quite a lot when I left. So coming back, it was that kind of, the fan aspect was overall by, that feelings of, not bitterness as such, but just still wanting to be a part of the club. Whereas now time's gone on, I'm kind of like, oh yeah, I can understand it a lot more and put my fans hat on, and rather than just my players, I can see it kind of from both point of views, which I think works maybe quite well on the radio, I'd imagine. Yeah,
very much so. So what was that like, dealing with that pain of leaving that you just mentioned there? Because you went at the end of your contract, it wasn't renewed, is that right?
So it was the end of my contract. Like I said, I'd had a long-term injury. I think I was out maybe 10 months that year. I think I got injured on the last game of pre-season against Chesterfield, broke my foot, hadn't healed by Christmas. They said it was going to heal, hadn't, ended up having surgery, got back for last game or 2. And by then, the mind was already made up at the club that, I'd had enough injuries and they weren't going to renew my contract. But, I'd been there since 8. It was the kind of only club that I really wanted to play at. I know modern day football, it's not really like that anymore, club people and change clubs and things like that. But I'd always kind of see myself as playing for Leeds. And yeah, it hurt at the time, and it took me kind of a few years to get over it, and maybe even until I retired. And then I kind of started coming back to Elland Road, watching the games, doing a bit of radio, and then it's like, oh yeah, my not affection, but yeah, that fan aspect comes back to it, because when you become a professional player, you can only have so much of a certain degree of wanting to be a fan. That kind of goes out the window a little bit, and you have to just be a professional and maintain those sort of standards, rather than just having, I just love this club, I just want to play, because ultimately you've got a job to do as well.
You make your debut at 16.
Yeah.
How weird is that to go? Because the gap between being a fan and a kid and being in the Leeds first team is incredibly small there.
Mm.
How do you deal with that psychologically?
Good question. I don't think I'd done anything different. I mean, I had a period of probably being between 14 and, well, when I made my debut, when I was like, I'm going for this, that real period of nothing, that mindset of, that's it, I'm going to do it no matter what. And it's, once you make your debut, obviously you start getting that little bit of attention and things like that. And that can be a distraction. And I'm not really a fan of that kind of side of things. I don't really like all the attention you used to get. I'm not really on social media and things like that. So for me, it was kind of, I'd prefer to shut that out and put it to one side and just kind of concentrate on my football. But then it does become a little bit of a distraction, when people are speaking to you in the street, all of a sudden you're like, it all seems a bit odd, doesn't it? And then,
particularly if you're a kid,
that's it. And then like all my family were Leeds fans, people at school, that kind of thing. So it just amplified things, being from the city and being around the city, that you get that extra little bit of attention, rather than if I was playing down south somewhere, for example.
Right. Sounds like you struggled with that then a little bit, because there's some kids who probably really embrace that sort of thing, particularly in the social media age, this day and age.
Struggle with it. I'm not sure struggle is like, I had a period where I might have gone on Twitter and things like that, and I came back off it. I just don't think it suits me as a person. I don't really like, I know it can be a great tool for probably you guys as your podcast and things like that, and other people. But I just don't really like, self promotion for my, and like that kind of attention. I'm quite a shy, reserved character deep down. And for that side of things, that all of the attention kind of comes quite quickly. Yeah, I'll just kind of rather be focused on just playing football rather than all that side that came with it as well.
When you're in the youth team, and everyone at the age of, I guess, 14, 15, is the first team's kind of in sight for you there. Mm-hmm. But obviously most people never make it. At that age, could you tell you were closer than other people to it? Or were there people in your age group that you thought, oh, they might be a bit better than me, maybe they're going to get the chance ahead of me here?
I feel like in my age group, like my best friend, Will Hartfield, he's still playing at Darlington. He was at the academy. He, from like age of 8, we were together. And I felt like probably he had a period between maybe 10 to 14 where he was playing up an age group and things like that. And, I was always like thinking, I want to be that guy, etc. And then it kind of got to probably say about 14, and then I started getting little training with the reserves and things like that. And I was on a bit of a flow, I guess, like kind of rhythm that managers and people talk about. And yeah, I was sensing that I was getting closer. I was starting to train with the first team little bits, even when I was like at sort of school and reserves, and I could feel myself getting there. But then I think I got the opportunity maybe through some good performances, but also you need luck, don't you, at that period of time? And I don't know, was it maybe Alan Sheehan might have got a red card or something in one of the games, or an injury? I'm not too sure. And then the opportunity came up for a left back, and I had a few training sessions with Gary McAllister's team, and then he was doing a starting 11 drill, and I had no idea that he just read a list of names out, and my name was in it, and I was like, this must be like the lads that aren't playing. We're taking them for, I don't know, a training session. We walk over to a different pitch, and he's setting up the team for Crystal Palace. I'm like, hang on a minute. And then it hits you.
Did you fully see yourself as a left back at that point?
I don't think throughout my career until I probably hit about 19, 20, where I was quite going to end up. Because throughout youth team, start from 8, I was a striker, and then it's a typical story of you get move back, and you end up suddenly a fullback. I think it was
the Gary Kelly path, isn't it?
Yeah, I got to probably about 12, 13, and one of my academy coaches at the time was like, look, if you really want that successful career, his personal opinion was, I see you as a left back, especially the way the game was going at that time. Like that modern day fullback was maybe just starting to get going, and he probably saw my sort of assets and qualities as that position. And from that 12 to 16 period, then it was really just mostly left back, but like youth cup games and youth team games occasionally, I'd be playing up as a 10 or on the wing and things like that. And I always felt I was a left back deep down, especially when I got to like that 18, 19 and in the first team for a few years. I thought if I want to have the more successful career, I'm probably better as a left back.
Right, but that explains why you ended up at number 10 under Warnock at one point, because it's become one of the sort of low-key running jokes on the show. Like former Leeds United number 10, Aidan White.
In Warnock's, I don't know what to do next. Let's just try something different. But you did score from there.
I scored from the right wing, I believe. Like I say, it wasn't just completely out of the blue. Like I'd play there in the youth team and things like that. And even when I went out on loan to Oldham for a period, Paul Dickov played me on the right wing, and I scored some goals from there. So it wasn't like completely out of the blue. For me, my best qualities, I felt like I wasn't a jinky wide man. Do you know what I mean? I was better when I had the ball and I was on the move, running with it at my feet rather than standing still and having to beat somebody one-on-one there. So I feel like my assets probably suited me better as the left back. Yeah. But then equally, I'm not the tallest, I'm not the strongest. So you have to be really clever on how you use your body and when you use your body. And over my career, just certain managers might not see me as a left back, and then the next one would, and it just kind of have that almost question constantly over your career. What's actually his best position? And for me, I'd probably say it was left back, but others may disagree.
It's interesting looking at like Isaac Schmidt, for example, as a player who can play wide, either in the wing positions or as fullbacks. And the modern game and inverted wingers and things like that, you see how Rafinha used to cut in from the right on his left foot, obviously a very heavily left-footed player. So maybe, your qualities would be suited to that sort of this era of football, really. And there'd probably be fewer question marks. Well, where does he really fit if it's this modern day with, let's say, inverted wingers and inverted fullbacks, things like that?
Yeah, I think even like Sam, for example, Sam Byram's had to play inverted a few times, like last season especially, and I actually thought he looked quite good there. I know he may be better suited down the right, but his link-up last season with Somerville at times was phenomenal, and me as a player, it's difficult to say, where I'd end up, but I think the way that systems play now, a lot of teams play like 3-5, don't they? 3-5-2 and things, with those attacking wing backs. And maybe not towards the end of my career, it probably didn't suit me quite as much because I wasn't as quick and as mobile, and I had lots of injuries by then. But if I was at Leeds at that period of time, I'd probably thought if they'd have played that sort of system, that would have suited me down to a T. I actually didn't mind being inverted and coming in from the right. I always felt like, because I wasn't necessarily really jinky and things like that, if I was on the wing, on the left or whatever, I'd just end up sometimes running down alleyways that probably weren't there, and it just didn't really suit me down to a T.
So cutting inside is something that you probably enjoy, and I suppose driving for the box.
Yeah, I guess that Everton goal kind of summed it up. That's what I just never did it enough, I guess. And but yeah, I preferred probably to come in a little bit more and link up play. And I think there was a period where actually Sam Byram was playing behind me at right back and I was playing right wing, and I think that quite suited us both because I could just drift inside, and as a fullback I knew what would suit Sam because it'd free him up down that right-hand side to gallop on down. But yeah, nowadays I don't know what position would suit me, maybe a wing-back.
Well, we're fresh off a defeat at Millwall midweek. We looked back into this, and your 7th ever game was a trip to the Den. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do for sure, yeah. I think I've had a back pass that stuck in my memory for forever, and I think Millwall went and scored from it. I think it might have been Dave Lucas in goal. I can't remember.
That's right. Was it Dave Lucas? Yeah, I've got the team in front of us.
So I think there was me. It was one of my first league games, I believe. It wasn't the first, but one of them. And yeah, as a 16-year-old, it's never a nice place to go down to, is it? But you're taking throw-ins, you're getting spat on and things like that. It's just one of those places that you don't really want to go. And we ended up getting beat. And I remember I made an error for one of those goals. And it's one of those you just try to brush off. And at the time, Gary McAllister, was really good with me about it, and all the senior players were brilliant. But yeah, it does kind of live with you a little bit as well.
It was. Neil Harris playing up front for Millwall.
Was Steve there as well? Steve Morrison
at that time.
For them,
it didn't start.
Right. No, it wasn't him. It looks like it was Lewis Graben was the other striker. It looks like on the day.
But yeah, the Leeds team that we lost 3-1 that day.
Right, okay.
Leeds team that day had David Lucas in goal, Lubo Mikalik, Rui Marquez, Fraser Richardson. Then you got Kilkenny, Delph, Douglas, Andy Hughes across midfield by the looks of it, with Jermaine Beckford and Luciano Becchio up front. Okay, I bet they were fun to be around, I imagine, when they're up front for you, because they've gone down in their own little sort of corner of Leeds United folklore.
They have. They had, for that sort of level, they've done tremendous for the club, haven't they? Bex was always good at playing on the shoulder, getting in behind players, and Luciano would do the other thing and come to feet, and the link took quite well between them, and they've scored plenty of goals, and really good guys as well. So yeah, I think obviously Jermaine's still involved with the club and the LUTV side of things. I'm not sure what Luciano's doing nowadays, but I hope
eating meat
as well.
Yeah, I follow him on Instagram. He seems to just have barbecues on all the time. It looks like a decent life.
What a lifestyle!
I know. Daniel Farke was relatively happy with the performance at the Den through the week. I don't think fans broadly agree with that. I don't know about you. It felt a little bit soft and insipid. What did you make of it?
For most of the game, I feel like, as a Leeds United team, we are 90% of the time we're going to dominate teams, aren't we, in possession? For me, it's just the fine margins. Like if you look at the goal conceded, if it's just almost like a small catalogue of little errors where that's going to maybe be that little bit of difference. If we can improve on that, then for sure, we've got a better chance. But if you look at it back, I think initially it comes like Meslier kicks it out and he's aiming for Nonto against Tanganga up front, and there's a massive height difference there. Tanganga just nods it down. Struick's just a little bit late and then gets caught out in his with the handball, and then from the free kick, if you look at it back, there's a point in time where there's like, I think it's Firpo, Rothwell, and Pirro. They're all stood in one line, and I think within a metre of each other, and it's just those details of if one of them or two of them just drop back a little bit, then it kind of kills the space for Tanganga to go get that knockdown and score. So I don't think we're far off it by any means. I think it's just polishing things up and making sure that those really fine details and those moments in games, even at the other end, where I think Cooper slips and doesn't take his first touch in the box, and Dan James gets the end of it. If he just tidies that cross up and just plays it along the floor to Pirro, then that might be 1-0. So I don't think we're far off by any measure, and I probably agree somewhat with Daniel Farke's sort of post-match conference in that fair play to Millwall, they've done a job on us. But we're not far off. It's just polishing up those certain moments. I don't know what you guys think.
No, it's really interesting hearing that from a pro's point of view, where you think it's just little moments, and like say maybe if you're just half a metre this way or a metre that way, it's the difference between winning and losing. Because the fan reaction to things like this, because we're absolutely full of existential terror and dread about Leeds United's place in the world, it's almost chucking the baby out with the bathwater, and it's a whole systematic failure. Daniel Farke's football does not work sometimes, so it all needs to change. We need a plan B, but actually you're saying it's just about those little moments?
Yeah, I think over the course of the season, we're going to have games where we're not going to get that result, but if he changes it every weekend to suit a different opposition or a different system, then we're just going to lose all kind of momentum, and lads are going to then get confused a little bit more. So it just keeps that structure of this is what we're doing, this is what we're sticking to. But I do get the fans' point of view where it's kind of like, well, when we do come up against this, because it is quite regular now, what are we going to do different to break teams down? But for me, like I say, it is those just the small moments and just polishing them up, then I think we'll be okay.
I think to look at the Millwall game in isolation as well, you can see that from the goals they've scored this season, from the way they played against us, the chances they did have, they all basically come from putting a ball towards Cooper's head. Yep. He wins the first ball, so it's up to you to either stop him winning it, which is very difficult because he's about 6'7" and he's actually amazing in the air as well. He's not like, I was just looking at the team sheet of Lubomir Mikalik, somebody who was very tall but not necessarily always brilliant in the air. But Cooper, I think he won pretty much every header. And we're not going to face that every week, but I suppose it's accommodating for the fact that you maybe accept you make it difficult for him in the challenge, but you need to be really on where the men are moving after that because they kept doing they did it a couple of times where they'd move the ball from a free kick, they'd move it wide a little bit to get more of an angle on the cross. He'd then try and knock it back across. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, it's a good finish as well as the goal.
Fair, yeah.
I think if he's given that another 10 times, he only probably scores one or two of them.
It was a very low XG, wasn't it? So it only goes in, I think it was like 6 times out of 100 or maybe even lower than that.
Yeah. So it was a good finish.
I think I'll give them a little bit of credit for it. But at the same time, like you mentioned, Michael, we know what they're going to do. And Rodon and Bogle, to be fair, it's difficult to win that ball. I think you've just got to do your best to try and make it difficult for Cooper on that header. It's just the reaction of knowing, look, we've got to expect he's not going to, our lads aren't going to win it, Rodon's not going to win it, and just expect to lose the ball and drop back in immediately. Just like I say, it's just of polishing up those details. And
so from a tactical point of view then, so you know that Jake Cooper is the danger man and maybe you haven't got the tools to compete with that. So you look obviously to cut out that pass in the first place to him. Yeah. But if it's a free kick, there's not a lot you can do about that. So under the circumstances, you then have to deal with the second ball. Is that the way you'd approach it from a tactical point of view?
Yeah, 100%. You want your Rodon and Bogle just to give it the best effort. You want them to win the ball, but ultimately...
Do enough to knock him off balance.
Yeah, he's 6'6". You're not going to win everyone. You've got to expect him to lose the ball, and the players have to be reacting to that. And yeah, just unfortunately they didn't quite in time. And I think Firpo was probably the only one that dropped in out of that Firpo, Pirro, Rothwell. I don't know if you've seen it back, but they're just kind of all at one point just in a line, and yeah, it just allows Tanganga just to run into that half space where he's unmarked, and it is a good finish. So give him credit.
Yeah, I think there is that idea from fans that we want our players to be perfect and not make any mistakes. But you're all humans on the pitch, and I suppose just if a couple of them switch off in that moment and they are in a line rather than just dropping into little spaces. Or is it, I suppose it's really hard to apply yourself and concentrate and execute a tactical plan for a full 90 minutes.
Yeah, it is. But ultimately, that's what we're striving to do as professionals. And it's frustrating from a fan's point of view because you're getting paid to do this. You should be able to do this. But as most players and, Sunday League players, that they know it doesn't always go right, and it's unfortunate. But the more you do that side of the game where you actually eliminate those little errors, or you tidy up at that final third of the pitch with that final ball or final shot, then it's those little details that make the difference in the long run, where we might have picked up a point, and who knows down the line whether that's enough to take us over the line for promotion. It's just, like I said, that polishing up the details for me.
What do you think of the style overall? The controlled, patient build-up that Farke seems to favour. Obviously, it yields a lot of points, but there are times, I think, from a fan's point of view, where it's quite difficult to watch for spells. It's been all right in recent weeks, and it always becomes more of a focus when we lose, like we did through the week. And people say it's all style related. What do you make of it?
I think because most teams know that they can't go toe-to-toe with us. If they do, 90% of the time we open them up. We're going to kind of be in that predicament where that they're allowing us to have possession of the ball, and it's kind of created that, Joe rode on to Struick and Struick back to Rodon, and I can see a fan's point of view where it is seem a little bit boring, a bit lethargic, but unless teams actually come toe-to-toe with us, it's difficult to make that entertaining and for that free-flowing football, so we have to be quite patient, and that is, again, a little bit dull sometimes. But in that final third, we have got players that can be quite electrifying. If they're on form, your Nontos, your Dan Jameses, and Ramazani's when he's fit. So I felt like last season we maybe relied on that a little bit too much with Somerville, and we just maybe need to learn our lessons a little bit and change things up very slightly now and again. Maybe have a slight plan B, not massively in terms of going away from the whole system, but how are we just going to break those teams down when they're sitting and make it difficult for us? With Millwall, it was very difficult because I think they've got 5 out of 6 clean sheets. They've got Tanganga, Cooper, very good central defenders, so it was difficult, but it's just finding that way of breaking teams down.
They're knocking it round at the back between the centre backs. As a fan, I perceive this as trying to draw the opposition out and make them impatient. Is that the purpose of that? Is it to just try and keep those strikers coming towards you and create a space? Yeah,
it's that, and then also allowing your own players to get into their positions to then create some kind of pattern or some kind of movement. So it's just being patient and waiting for that little bit moment where, like say, we might draw somebody out, or one of our players might do a little bit of movement, check to go in behind, or just something of that kind of sort where it is a little bit dull, but it's just that kind of like almost a little bit chess-like, isn't it? Just waiting, patient, and then executing that. And when we do, we tend to open up teams quite well.
Yeah. Do you think maybe still we're suffering with a bit of a Bielsa hangover with the sort of gung-ho football? What do you make of that as a pro? What was being asked of that team in terms of A, physical demands, and B, the style?
Oh, it's tremendous from a fan's point of view, wasn't it? Because it was so entertaining to watch, and you're just like, how are these lads constantly doing that week in, week out? And, fair play to the guys, your Coopers, your Dallases and Aylings and, all that squad, because that's some doing every week to be, they might not have been the most, sort of, I'm not saying taking this away from them, but compared to sort of Premier League players at your top end of the table, they weren't necessarily as talented as those, but what they provided in a different aspect of that work rate and that sheer volume of running and just relentlessness, it's certainly better to watch, but it must have been hard as a pro to constantly do that. And I can imagine it takes over your life, because I wasn't there, obviously I don't really know, but you hear rumours about having to meet certain weight criteria and things like that, and I can imagine that you had to be so dedicated for him, and if you weren't, you'd kind of be put to one side.
Can you see how it does become sort of draining on players after a certain while with that level of demands? Because it was interesting when I asked you that question, you got a little twinkle in your eye and a sparkle, which suggested to me it was something really exceptional that he was asking of players. And yet I don't think they were allowed to train if they didn't hit that day's weight target, which meant if you didn't train, you couldn't play.
Okay.
So
yeah, it's just something.
Was it extraordinary in your mind as a pro?
Yeah, I think so. Like to take, like for example, Coops. Coops was there at my last season, so great guy, really good player. But to for someone like that to play at that level and do what that did, I know what that requires. For him to put his body through that, and yeah, like you say, I think it was quite extraordinary. But at the same time, what we're doing now, it may not be as flair-like and as like almost a little bit mystical, isn't it? That element of Bielsa, it may not be like that, but we're not necessarily playing in the Premiership, and we're playing against teams that are sitting in and making it more difficult for us. Whereas back then it was sort of a different style. It's
weird being normal when you've been extraordinary. I think that's probably it, isn't it?
Yeah.
So on to like QPR at home at the weekend. You head into this one?
Yeah, I'm going to this one. Yeah, as a fan. So
watching it as a fan, that should be fun.
I am.
Yeah, and how do you think this one's going to go? Do we bounce back from defeat against Millwall? Because QPR are not looking good at the minute. I'm just looking at where they are in the table. It's
23rd.
Yeah, correct, yeah. Second bottom on 10 points. They are 6 points adrift as it's... beg your pardon, 5 points adrift as it stands. So they're already looking like they're in fairly major trouble. It should be a home win, shouldn't it? There's no way to make an argument otherwise.
No. Yeah, it's a win, and anything less, then it doesn't hit expectations, does it? And all fans are expecting it to be a win. So, yeah, I'd imagine they'd sit back in again, and it might be a little bit difficult first 15, 20. But if we get that first goal again, then, yeah, I think we'll be fine.
I'm just still a bit damaged by the game at the end of last season, I have to say, when we went
the QPR
there.
game,
4-0.
And we lost 4-0, because that was strange.
I think if we were down there for this game...
More difficult.
Yeah, off the back of losing to Millwall, you'd go, we're still in London
again.
So do you stay down there, or do you travel back? And is it that going to disrupt things? And it's not Millwall, it's London again, as you say, Aidan. But I think with it being back at Elland Road, they're going to want that reaction. Yeah, they're going to want to get that reaction. The players themselves, I mean, never mind the fans.
I expect nothing less than, to be honest, a win. Like I say, I don't think it'll be the easiest 15, 20, but once we seem to get that first goal and we open teams up a little bit more, that growing confidence, and settle everybody down in the stadium, and then it becomes a nice game, hopefully as nice as the Plymouth one.
Yeah, that was nice to the point of being strange.
It was.
Quite frankly, it was so odd. I've not seen such a one-sided fixture or approach to a fixture for many years.
It was the fact they just didn't try to turn the screw at all in the second half. It felt like you normally will get...
You're losing, lads.
You only will get a period where they'll at least have a go, but that just felt like everyone on the pitch had just gone, 3-0's fine. Let's go.
Yeah, I think obviously Rooney got sacked the year before, didn't he? Was it Birmingham? Yeah, playing at Elland Road. Well, maybe back of his mind he's thinking he's not been on the greatest form. We just want to sit in and damage limitation at that point.
Well, actually, we'll ask you, from a pro's point of view, are there these games that the squad or the team will just go, we don't expect to get anything from this one, lads, so let's just go to this game, get it done out the way, and get home again and move on to the next fixture? Is that a thing?
As a Leeds player, or as any team?
As a pro within the game, yeah. Would a team where there is that bigger gap of, I suppose, of talent available, but then again, they did cause us a couple of problems in the home game last season, so that it's not a million miles away from that. But I viewed that like, you wonder if the Plymouth hierarchy, this was the point of this question, was the Plymouth hierarchy, because we were saying, please keep Rooney in the job until he's visited Elland Road, and we were making a case for it, weren't we? We were saying they'll probably keep him in until the international break at the earliest, because they expect to come to Leeds and lose, basically. I think realistically, they would look at that fixture, almost, I suppose, in fans' eyes and go, well, we're not going to get anything there. I just wonder, will the players also view it in the same way?
I think as a player, when you're playing against a very good team, it's going to be difficult. I don't think I've ever had the point where it's like we've given up before we've even got going. I don't think as a professional you can go into a game and think of it like that. But just the way that they set up, it was, right, we're here to draw, aren't we? Or just to try. As soon as we got that goal, although nothing changed, it was then just damage limitation. Like I say, I don't think as a professional you can ever go into a game and think we're just here to be here. You've got to make a good account of yourself, and for those Plymouth fans that travelled all that way, they'll probably be a little bit disappointed they didn't even lay a glove, did they? So that'd be upsetting for them. But as a player, you can never go into a game and just be like, this is it.
How do you deal with it in a game? I'm just thinking like you played in the Man City game in the Cup under Warnock, where it was Aguero and David Silva and Torres. You turn up to that obviously expecting the worst, and we were a couple down within 20 minutes or something. On the pitch, there, are you in your mind thinking, please don't let this be 7 or 8, or are you still thinking at that point?
Not 2-0, not 2-0, but when it gets to your 3s and your 4s, you're like, you don't give up, but there's that period of where you're just like, look, we really need to protect ourselves here and make sure that we don't go in and get completely embarrassed, although it is that gulf in talent and the players that they had on show that day. I just remember Aguero. What stood out for me was, like, I think I was tracking him back at one point, and it wasn't how fast he moved, it was how fast he stopped. And I was just like, it'd gone from like 20 miles an hour to suddenly stopping in the blink of like, and then I looked at his legs, and his legs were just like tree trunks, and it all made sense all of a sudden.
That's incredible. What a physical specimen you are.
Yeah.
You're incredible, Sergio. I want a home win out of this one, obviously, being a Leeds fan.
There'll be a meltdown if this isn't a home win, let's be honest.
I mean, they've scored 12 goals all season. They've won one game. And I know everyone will look at that and go, well, it's now that you know, they shouldn't at all. This is a different proposition at Elland Road, I think, to going to Millwall on a Wednesday night under the lights.
And we've said many a time, the nice thing about the Championship is you lose midweek, but there's another game just around the corner and you win it. And other teams will drop points as well. Like you saw Burnley drop points again, didn't they, last night? Another 0-0. Which I know their fans were moaning about. The other week, they were saying how they don't create any chances, although they did have a very dubious disallowed goal in that. Did you see it? Jaden Anthony scored a goal that was disallowed for a push, and he doesn't touch the guy. Right. He should have been allowed. But yeah, you see, they've dropped points this week. Sunderland have started dropping points as well. Sheffield United could do with going away, but
they've got a derby at the weekend, I think.
They have.
Yeah,
I've
got the fixtures. Yeah, it's on Sunday. It's the Sunday lunchtime kickoff. The Sheffield clubs meet one another. What I find interesting with the table now is it's just starting to stratify a little bit, with Sunderland at the top on 30, Sheffield United on 28, we're on 26, arguably should have had more, and Burnley on 24. But then it's a 4-point gap now to West Brom, who are in 5th, who drew again through midweek, didn't they? So it's just starting to maybe break away into a little bit of a top 4. You could maybe see that happening. What I'd like it to do is for us to be in the top 2 and it break away into a top 2.
It's nice to see Millwall in the playoffs anyway, in case we end up in there, because we've got a great record against them.
Well, last time we crossed paths was doing BBC Radio Leeds just ahead of the playoff final. So yeah, shudder up my spine at the thought of playoffs. I don't know about you, I'm not even thinking about it. I can't even factor it into my thinking this season.
I think automatic is the goal, isn't it? And unfortunately, even if we get promoted via the playoffs, if worst came to worst, then I still think we're probably underachieved. I think like automatic promotion is the one this year. I hate the playoffs. As a player, they are the best thing if you get promoted via the playoffs. I feel it's probably better going up that way rather than doing it automatic, because you've got that almost cup game feeling, etc. So there's nothing like going up via the playoffs, but just
have you done that?
I did it with Barnsley in the League One playoffs, and it's just you get that the feeling after going up Wembley and things like that. That's tremendous. So if we could have done that at Southampton, it'd have been against Southampton. Sorry, it'd have been an amazing feeling, wouldn't it? But as a club, we're not great in the playoffs.
You've done it. You've experienced it. Why can't we do it? What's wrong with us?
I don't know. Is it just too much expectation? Too much? I don't know. It's difficult, isn't it? We just seem to never quite show up whenever we get to Wembley, and I don't want to put my finger on it and say it is due just to that weight of the club over it, but it's
got to be
hard.
A factor.
I'd imagine it is. I mean, I've never played for Leeds at Wembley, but obviously we've had periods when I was there when we were in the semis and things like that, and you're expected to go up because you're the biggest club, no matter kind of what division you're in at this point to go up. So
it's weird. Barnsley against Millwall in the playoff final, I can go, all right, yeah, Barnsley have got a chance in that. Leeds against Millwall in the playoff final, I'd go into it going, well, obviously we're not going to win this.
Yeah. That's just Leeds v Millwall, isn't it? It just never seems to go in our way, I'm afraid.
Just looking down the other fixtures, you've got Sunderland against Coventry, playing at the same time as us at the weekend.
And with the new manager?
What a strange decision. I didn't realise that they were 17th, Coventry. Now, admittedly, they're only on 15 points, which is the same as Plymouth, who are in the relegation spots. But it felt like they were sort of turning that around, and it feels like the first blip they've had under Mark Robbins, and he's just being got rid of. It's absolutely weird.
It's admittedly a small sample size, but under the club's tweet about it, every response I saw was saying, why have you done this? How could you do this? I'd rather we went down with him. He's earned the right to have another few months at this, at least.
Especially with Portsmouth on 9 points and QPR on 10, and then a 5-point gap. So at this stage, you're going to be looking at it and realistically thinking, it's going to be one more plus those two, unless there's a big, things can change. But when you look at those bottom two teams who've won one game each across this season, you think that feels like a really risky move to do that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously not really followed Coventry too much this season, so I don't know what the performances have been like. But yeah, if you're a fan and you're all kind of in the same boat as saying, well, why have we sacked him? Maybe something's gone on, behind the scenes or something like that. I don't know. I'm just speculating here, but it's almost like us under Bielsa, that period, wasn't it? Where it was like, well, if we go down, I'd rather still have Bielsa, and things didn't really go to plan either way, did they?
No, and here we are still. Sheffield United against Sheffield Wednesday is the Sunday lunchtime kickoff. We've got QPR, and we're at Burnley. Let's have a look. They are playing at home against Swansea on Sunday afternoon. You'd expect them on balance to win that, I would imagine. Let's have a look. Where are Swansea?
You would, but
they're ninth.
They are struggling to score goals at Burnley as well.
Yeah, they seem to be. Again, it's just a very loose kind of anecdotal bit of information, but they don't seem to be attacking much. They seem to be going for very controlled, tight football, where a bit like West Brom, I suppose. Which it was no surprise that they drew 0-0. Yeah, so it's a chance, I suppose, to potentially. I don't know, close the gap, maybe.
Going into an international break as well.
Yeah, I think, do you just want to go into the international break with a win under your belt?
I think so.
And that's it. It doesn't need to be any more than that.
You've got that period where if you lose going into an international, like Michael said earlier, where the quick turnaround can be so helpful if you've lost a game. Just going from one bang straight into another, it's forgotten about. Even as fans, if we've had 2 weeks of talking about a defeat, it's all a little bit flat, isn't it? Whereas if you just quick turn around, right, you've gone and won one going into that international, it's the mood's a little bit happier around the camp. We're in a healthier place. And then, to be honest, though, we're not always great at coming out of internationals, are we? So it'd be nice to just come out of that and get a win against Swansea as well.
Prediction's always dangerous, but I'm happy to predict a home win on this one.
It's got to be.
Yeah, for me, I'm going to go 3-0, 3-0.
Confident.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll take that. Aidan, thanks for coming in.
Pleasure.
Really appreciate it.
Having me.
Thank you. We'll see you soon.
Brilliant.
The Square Ball Podcast.